All right. Good evening. Tonight is the March 1st, 2021 full board meeting to do a board work session. This is board work session on the budget number 6, revenues, transfers, and fees. And with that, I will pass it off to our budget guru, Mr. Jack. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Mr. Dunn, it's all yours.
All right, thank you. So this presentation...
Oh, wait a second. Before we do that, we should take probably a roll, and that's exactly right. So we should make sure everybody... I can look and see everybody, but I guess we should take it and make sure. So in that case, Ms. Cannon, will you call the roll of attendance?
Certainly. Ms. Higgins.
Here.
Ms. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Parker.
I am here.
Mr. West. Ms. West, sorry.
Here.
Mr. Weinberg.
Here.
Ms. Walsh.
Here.
Ms. Hastings.
Here.
Mr. Richards.
Here.
And I am here. So I'd just like to say we are all here.
Okay, yes, we are all physically present and everyone is in attendance. And with that, now I will pass it on to you, Mr. Dunn.
All right, thank you. So this presentation is in your Google Drive folder under the budget 2022. So for tonight, we're just going to hit a couple big areas: revenues, transfers, and fees. And also end it with our public information and where you can see this presentation, which is already posted, minutes and videos of the other meetings. So for revenues, this slide was from the overall presentation, and I do this to highlight just from a big picture level of the revenues, what we are looking to collect locally, state, federal, the transfers, how much we plan to have in savings for this year of this budget, how much will be collected from local property taxpayers for both the state education tax and the local education tax. So this is a slide also from our first presentation showing you that 19% of the revenue that comes in is local, 62% state. This is before taxes, 2% federal, 8% in this budget is coming from your trust funds, and 9% is coming from a year-end fund balance. Again, this is before property taxes. As you see, this is the detail of each of them at a higher level. Again, this is the same slide we did in our opening presentation. Now we're going to go and start diving deeper into what makes up each of these. All right, first we'll start with the local. So as you can see, this is the descriptions that are in our financial system, and I'm going to just mention a little bit about each one. I put a note in each of these pieces for the current appropriation. That is the local property tax, and currently that amount is $13.13 per thousand. Second item is a revenue in lieu of taxes. That is what's called a pilot, a payment in lieu of taxes, where there is a taxpayer in the city that pays the school district directly. The tuition, that is Project Search, which is a program we run out of Concord Hospital. That amount is $21,981.63 per pupil. The tuition from individuals, we don't have any plan for that. We don't bring in special individual students. Regular education, the $20,000, that is preschool tuition. That has ranged as high as 40-some thousand. This year, we're budgeting about 20, trying to be conservative there and hoping that the preschool program comes back. With the VOC runs a child care program, and there were some changes that were made to that last year. So we're not anticipating, we're anticipating about $11,000 that comes from that. As you see those various other ones for summer school, we have nothing planned in there. We plan on using the COVID funds for that because it's going to be probably pretty big. And then the summer school and adult education, there are accounts that we no longer use because that was under the old community ed program, and that program was turned over to the city, and they run that out of the old Dame School or the new community center. The tuition from LEAs in the state, that is the amount in special education tuition we expect to receive from Deerfield. Regular day tuition, that is the amount charged for every regular education student and special ed student that come to Concord High. So this year, their tuition, based on their formula in the contract, is $13,702 and I think 57 cents. And then the Deerfield capital fee, and you'll see that number in the transfers. If you look under the FY22 budget column, the $85,312.91, you're going to see in the transfers, as I mentioned in our opening presentation we did on this budget. That amount comes in, and then we send it right to the school building maintenance fund, because Deerfield does not pay any portion of our debt for any improvements to the facilities. Okay. I'm going to hit ones where I have notes on. You have the VOC tuition, which is this amount raised from the sending students to the CRTC, and they are billed to the local education agency, which is the local school district. And then they also pay a capital fee that's governed by the state, and there is a certain amount that we can charge for each of those, and that goes into their trust fund. We have the student bus fees that we charge $25 for each student that wants to sign up to take a bus. And then the other charter, that is what we use the bus service to charge the other grants for providing bus service for those students, whether it's after-school programs or any of the title grants.
Jeff,
Yeah.
if a student or a family guardian cannot afford like the student bus fees, what's the process for that?
So on the form, there's $25 if it's done before August 1st, $40 after that, and then there's a waiver request, all in the same form, that if they can't afford it. The purpose of this is not to pay for the bus system, which is about $3.4 million, because I've had that question about why do you charge this fee, you're trying to pay for the bus system. $5,000 is a far cry from $3.4 million. But the purpose of it is for the purposes of routing. And what's been explained to me was if we had to assume every kid was taking the bus, we'd have to add another 13 buses. So all it is planning purposes. And under the law, we're not required to provide transportation to high school students. Only K-8 have governance. But we do offer it, and again, that's for this purpose. But if somebody requests a waiver, we honor that.
Thank you.
Interest on investments, that is money that is either in the general fund or in investment accounts. And as you can see, that is a fiery 0.02%. In the last budget, which we wound up correcting, that amount of last budget we did was about 2.47%. So you can see how much the return on those investments have nosedived. The activity fee, that is the fees that we charge for athletics. And you'll see that further on the presentation, what those charges are. We're trying to budget that conservatively. To see, hey, if more comes in, great, but if not, hopefully we'll at least raise that amount. That's a little less than what we did last year when we shut down for the final 3 months. Student parking pass, that's no longer charged. And the lost book fee is if we don't budget assuming people are going to lose their books. So whatever comes in, it's kind of miscellaneous. Okay, I'll move on to rentals. That is the building rental. We're aiming for hopefully $125,000 this year. There is a rate sheet that's on the website, which I provide a link, and it all depends on what rooms you rent, whether it's an auditorium, cafeteria, classroom. It's all dependent, and the facilities director manages that. I'm not going to go through each of the fees, but I'll ask if anybody has any questions on all those ones that are zero. Again, these are just things we've either had money we received in the past and that's why they're set up, and according to the 1999 financial manual, this is where they would reside. Yep.
What do we do in a typical non-COVID year for rentals?
At least 150 to 175, and if it's a presidential year, we'll break 275.
It seemed like a big jump. And does this include any, the building we rent, the old school, whose name?
Oh, Eastman?
Eastman,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes, yeah.
That's in that number.
That's $1,600 a month. We rent the Millbrook Broken Ground for $1,500 a month. That's joint. They pay that through their after-school program, and then it's $1,000 for each of the other elementary schools a month.
For the after-school?
Yeah, for the after-school programs. And they were all put in, I think, Krista McAuliffe was the first one we started, and I think that was the first year I was here, and then we've expanded that between 21C and having after-school. We did feel that that was beneficial to have the kids there in the morning, and they can be there till 5:30, 6 o'clock. Parents know where those kids are. And we utilize the facilities for that in partnership with the Boys and Girls Club and Concord Family Y. Concord Family Y does Ebbett Downing and Beaver Meadow, and Boys and Girls Club does Krista McAuliffe's Millbrook Broken Ground.
Jeff, sorry. I see that these are from like 2015 and 2016. Have we like considered raising at all?
It's something we need to review to see whether we should do that and when's the appropriate time. We thought about that in this budget going into next year, but we're just trying to, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The P-card rebate, that is how much we get rebated back to us from the use of the district's credit card. We try to put everything and anything possible onto the credit card because we get that rebate. And Shirley Hamlin, who is in the AP office in my department, she does a fantastic job in trying to do everything she possibly can to get money on those cards. The only time we don't use that card is if somebody charges a processing fee, then we cut a check. But other than that, this would be for all charges that we use, whether it's Amazon, WB, you name it. If they don't charge a fee and they take credit card, we pay it. I think that's the end of the local revenue. We'll move on to the state. So the first one is the adequacy, which they've renamed to Equitable Education Grant. This is probably the one that they'll talk about the most over the next couple of days. I just got an email from the monitor asking what that free and reduced impact will be if they don't make us whole. That's where it resides into there. And there's a whole formula that goes into calculating that. But that is one of the big hits, as we talked about in a what-if scenario in our opening presentation. That's one of the hits that we're taking. And a portion of that is free and reduced, and a portion of it is enrollments. So you can see it's how important that is. The Equitable Education State Tax, we just get a warrant article from the state in January and says raise $7,308,384, period. And that's all governed by an RSA and tells how that is appropriated. So it is a fixed amount from a standpoint of a pool of money that you raise. But they don't tell me raise it by this percentage. They just tell me that's the amount you need to raise in local taxes. The unrestricted aid is something that's come about in the last few years, where this is charter schools where we're providing special education aid there. They give us, the state gives some portion of that paid. So typically when that has come in, we just mimic what we got last year because we don't know what that will potentially be. And school building aid, that's the amount that we get on the HVAC project for Runlet and the elementary school consolidation. That amount will change from now until the end of the year, now until 2041, which is our last debt payment, because we will have some debt that falls off in 2026, which is the Runlet HVAC. But as of right now, there's no plan for any additional revenue to come from that until there's a project. The kindergarten aid, that's no longer used. There was legislation, I think, in the last legislature that folded that into the equitable education aid and made those made those kids whole. I think they were treating them as a fraction of a student. I think they were treated as a 0.5 instead of a 1.0, if I remember right. But that was a supplemental, and then they got rid of it and made it all part of the Equitable Education Grant. And then Catastrophic Aid, which is now called Special Education Aid, that is reimbursements based on formula and the amount in the pool and certain number of other different criteria that determines how much we'll get in special education aid. And then for the vocational aid, that is how much the state portion pays of the CRTC tuition. And then the second one is the supplemental aid that they pay for the capital fee. So you may have seen two, one in the local and one in the state. There's the state portion that comes directly to us, and then there's the local portion that we have to send bills out for whatever the state doesn't pay. Okay. And then if I move on to federal aid, you have, yep, Pam?
The numbers for the state aid, are they based on the governor's budget? What are we using to develop those numbers?
Whatever DOE sent us. They sent us a list of numbers.
Okay,
And that's what's published on the website. That's what we use until we're told differently.
great, thank you.
No problem. I'll follow up on that. That is one of the, again, another advantage that you have as a board when we go and we look at that tax rate in October. If you remember, some of you, I don't think it was this budget. It was the last one because it was passed late. If, for those that were on the board, remember, we had supplemental income that came from that kindergarten aid getting rolled in. They gave money. We were able to adjust the budget and encumber that in the budget to be able to maintain the tax rate and fix that. So it is possible, depending on what budget gets passed, that some of this may get offset, which is why we've used a lot of the money from the expendable trusts, because of a lot of the unknowns. Okay, revenue from federal sources. This is the amount that we get for the indirect that we charge to the grant. So we are allowed to charge 2.1% for any of the amounts spent on title grants. And that is our indirect, so that's supposed to cover our overhead. Now you may see that change to $365,000. And again, I note it's because we're no longer going to get revenue from the Build America bonds that were done in 2010. And the reason is because we refunded them and we no longer have that. So when you factored all that in, if you remember, that refinancing took us from a 3.625% interest rate down to a 1.43. And even including this revenue, we're saving $10 million over the final 20 years of this project. So it was still well worth it, even losing that revenue. For Medicaid, that is how much we are anticipating from Medicaid claims. We use a third-party provider to help. And in the budget, I think it was 2 years ago, we added a person that's helped dedicated to that because of the complexities that continue to get added with that and the restrictions that they continue to put on what counts and what doesn't count. We were at about $1.3 million 3 years ago, and it's changed. E-rate, there is Category 1 and Category 2. Category 1 now only pays for the district's internet, or helps subsidize it, I should say. Doesn't help pay for it 100%. But they used to cover portions of cell phones and landlines. They phased that out over 4 years, so that's not covered anymore. And Category 2 is something that comes up every 5 years, and that is where they pay for some infrastructure. So if you remember in the opening presentation, we talked about the wireless upgrade in the district. So that's, we'll see one of those access points around here, but they're here because, over on that wall. We have to upgrade those throughout the district, and Pam may have noted that in her technology presentation. And we'll get about, I believe it's 60% of that refunded. So that's why you see that big increase from of $175,000. And that's it for federal revenue. So now if I move on to the property taxes, We had estimated your current rate for the local is $13.13, and in this budget, we're looking at about a 39-cent increase, or almost a 3%, 2.97. We're looking for it to go to $13.52. When it does, we estimate that'll raise $57,327,839. On the state side, again, they just provide the number. When they plug the number in, this is what it translates that means on a per thousand basis. So we're going to go from $1.87 currently down to $1.76, or a reduction of 11 cents. So combined, it'll look like a 28-cent increase, or a 1.87% increase, going from a combined rate of $15 to $15.28. And remember in the opening presentation, that shows about a $97.50 on the local, a decrease of $27.50 on the state, which is an increase of about 70. That's before city and county taxes on the local property tax bill. Any other questions? So I'll move on to transfers. So transfers are both expenses, and they're also revenues, depending on how you're handling. And think of it as yourself, where if you put money into savings, it's money now out of your pocket, but it's in some type of account earning interest. If you're taking it out of savings, it reduces that side, and you get some new money coming in. So if you remember this slide from the opening presentation, we talked about the expenditure transfers. And what I do is I'm going to show you the expense side, the revenue, and then what it looks like combined, and then what you're looking at for a balance among all the trust funds. So as I mentioned, in the school building renovation trust fund, the $85,313.59, that's that amount that we're collecting from the Deerfield capital fee. Again, comes in, goes right out. So there isn't any tax positive, no tax negative, in, out. The facilities purchase and renovation expendable trust fund, as you see, that has a $7.5 million balance. In this budget, we'll put 1.4. It's going to bring you close to $9 million. So that facilities purchase and renovation fund is what's been used to stabilize the tax rate when there is a significant capital project. So when we built the 3 elementary schools, that was drawn on to decrease that impact and bring it down to maintain. If you remember talking about the 5% of the budget is earmarked for debt, that's what we try to stay within. And when we talk on March 17th, you'll see what that impact would be if you didn't have it. How much of a hill that is to climb by trying to maintain 5% of that budget and basically equalizing it across every taxpayer. The Evoke Center Capital Reserve Trust Fund, again, that's amount raised from the capital fee, and that comes in and goes right to the Evoke Capital Trust Fund for the CRTC. And then you see the general fund to the food service program. We're proposing to transfer $77,961 into the food service program to help support that a little bit, because we anticipate that food service will be a little difficult next year. Hopefully it'll be better than what we have now, but hopefully we can get that back to making a little money. If it breaks even, that's all we really care. Okay? So now these are revenues. These are where we are pulling from the savings. So we're not pulling anything out of the food service fund to reimburse the district for anything. We're not transferring from any special revenue fund. But remember I was talking about the 2.1% that says transfer from special ed revenue or federal grant fund? That is the 2.1%, the indirect that we were charging. So that's what that amount is, and that's just revenue into the general fund. The transfer from the building renovation maintenance fund, remember on the expense side I said we were putting money in from the Deerfield capital fee. Now we're taking money out, and that is to help cover, we were talking about the lighting project, and also I think that was the majority of the lighting project for both the SAU and starting up at the high school. And then transfer from the instructional trusts, we are not proposing anything be transferred out of that trust. The transfer from the health dental reserve, we're proposing $700,000 come out of there to mitigate the impact of the increase in health. We're not proposing anything out of the energy trust fund, nothing out of the purchase and renovation trust fund. That's the one we're putting $1.4 million into. And right now, nothing out of the vote capital reserve. We are proposing to transfer $500,000 out of the special ed trust fund. If you remember when we talked about it tonight of student services, we're doing that to mitigate any of the students that we have going out. Remember, we're showing an increase in the special education out of district line, and we're hoping we don't have to use this, but we wanted a buffer to offset to see if we can get a lot of those kiddos back into the district. And then the transfer from the technology trust fund, $439,150. We're using that to offset the impact of purchasing Runlet devices, as well as the upgrade to the wireless. And then what we did is we put together a slide that shows you, this is what we have for projected beginning of year. That's what the BOY is, beginning of the year for FY22. That's what we anticipate the balances to be in there, into those trust funds. For the deposit, again, those expenditure ones, that's what we are charging against the general fund. The withdrawal or revenue, this is what we're pulling in from those trust funds. And then that's what we would project for an end of year balance next June of 22. Okay. I'll move on to the fees that we charge. So for the athletic fees, we charge $85 for all the sports. For CHS, we charge $90. And for ice hockey only, whether it's JV or the varsity, it's $385. The bus transportation fee we talked about is $25. The Deerfield capital fee, which I meant to upgrade, that should say $517. I put a number in it. I apologize, I didn't. I have that number. And the facility use fee, which that was the link you saw earlier. That's all the fees that I can think of as far as what's a fee. I didn't go through and count the tuition. I noted those in your local revenue. If they were collecting revenue, I put those amounts. I think I covered most of that. So.
Jack?
Yes.
And for these rates, they cover, I'm guessing, both operation and what the district is looking to make, or no, because it's nonprofit.
When you get into the nonprofit, it's really a community basis, and trying to do that. And your policy governs that. The only ones that don't pay is the city. Okay, we don't charge each other for that because it's the same taxpayer. And then for for-profit groups, we hit them. And then we do make special exemptions when we have long-term contracts like we do with Concord Y and the Boys and Girls Club. Because if we did that, it would be probably pretty high. But we do feel that there's a mutual benefit between the families of the school district, the community, and providing that service. So they do have longer-term contracts because they're 1 year. These are if they call up and say, hey, I want to rent a room, boom. That's what gets quoted.
Thank you.
You got it. And then for the public information, we have this information in the presentations on the website. These are the list of the board members. And I changed up that slide a bit to try to make it a little bit more readable of the upcoming public hearing presentations. As I mentioned with Millbrook, since we don't have access, there won't be a virtual link. That is an in-person only. Concord TV will be there to record, but it's just going to be on a tape delay. It usually goes up the next day. So, but the other ones will have virtual access from here. I have been informed that they, correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, is it the one-acts that they're doing?
Yes, Peter, one act.
Yeah. So that is starting that week that we're doing some of our presentations. So in working with Clint Close and his team, they should be done by 6:30 so we can have our 7 o'clock public hearing. So we're trying to be mindful of their time, letting us use their hut. All right, and then we'll vote on the budget. We'll look for you to vote on the budget on the 31st. There is an open session, as you can see when we get to the schedule. You do have an open session between the public hearings and the vote on the budget, so if it's needed, but March 31st is what we will post for, what we'll advertise for. That's our hope, because the district has an obligation to start issuing professional contracts. Actually, that day is the principals, but we'll work with them, and that's usually not an issue. With the teachers, they're April 15th, and then other groups start to follow after that. So once you post a budget, the big day is the March 8th, then we will post, because we have to do at least 9 days prior to the public hearing, 10 days prior to the public hearing for the public. Okay? And that's all I have. If you have questions on this or any other topic, if I can't answer, I'll write it down. But we wanted to try to get done because it needs a couple minutes to transfer meetings too. So we have plenty of time. Told you, Josh, I'd do my best. Well,
Any questions?
We're trying to
for
get
Mr.
efficient.
Dunn? Any additional questions on tonight's topic?
What are the athletic fees? What is the process for scholarships or waiving those fees for students?
yeah, you have a policy that goes through the athletic director. So if they senses a hardship, he can waive that fee. And we've done that a little bit more this year. One of the things we've tried to avoid was hockey, because it's such an expensive sport, and we do feel for that amount, considering what you pay privately. But we have given exemptions this year, considering the situation.
Thank you.
Do we still follow free and reduced lunch guidelines? Because those kids used to be automatically exempt, as I recall.
It's not in the policy that we follow that. It's really them filling out, and we don't get into that kind of data.
Okay.
It is something we are going to review, though. I think it would make it a lot less arbitrary.
Right.
Jack, have the fees changed at all? And when was the last time we reevaluated those fees?
I want to say 2015.
Okay. And do you anticipate any extraordinary cleaning fees coming up in the next budget season that we should be aware of with regards to renting any of these? I know that we're all confident that we'll be in a different place than we are right now, but have you planned any, or do you anticipate any?
As of right now, no, because we are just going to do our normal cleaning, and we already pay the overtime and charge the custodial fees to cover that. So right now, there's nothing that's over and extraordinary, at least as of right now. But we also haven't really had anybody in there in a year, for the most part.
Thank you.
But if there is, we'll just adjust and charge accordingly.
Other questions? It's kind of nice not having to twist my neck to see if I have anybody who has a hand up back there. Thank you all for saving my neck. All right. Thank you, Mr. Dunn.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate it. Superintendent, do we have anything else for this particular budget session?
No, that's all. We just covered everything for tonight.
All right. Well, that being said, thank you all. I would entertain a motion to adjourn this budget meeting for March the 1st.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Higgins. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Parker, who was closer to me, so I heard him first. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned until the regular meeting. Thank you, everyone.